and go ahead and get started. Our first part of the Anatomy and Physiology series, because it's too much to do all in one day, is really focusing in on the cardiac and the respiratory system. And I'm going to start for you all on the respiratory system, okay? So specifically for the T's, because I know that's what a lot of you guys are taking. This is that second science goal, that S.1.2 under the Anatomy and Physiology. And like I said, I like to start it off with, why do we have this system in our body in the first place? What does the respiratory system actually do for us? Why does it matter? And the end all be all here is gas exchange. There are two gases we're going to talk about. The first one's oxygen. The second one is carbon dioxide. The whole point of the respiratory system is to get oxygen into the body and get carbon dioxide out of the body. So keep that in mind. That's going to answer a lot of questions as we move forward and look at the structure, okay? Naturally, when we're thinking about the respiratory system, what organ are you thinking about? The lungs, right? The spongy, we have two of them, so they're in a pair, and each lung is divided into lobes. Now, I think this is a fun little factoid. The right lung actually has an extra lobe. It's got three, and on the left, we only have two. Now, on the outside of those lungs, we have something called pleural membranes, and those are going to really help the lungs be able to expand and then go back, get bigger and smaller. All that moving in, out, bigger, smaller, that can cause a lot of friction when the tissues are rubbing up against each other. But because they are covered by these pleural membranes, we have a reduction in that friction. Inside the pleural membrane is this serous visceral pleura, and that lining helps everything slide back and forth without friction. Think it's like WD-40, right? Lubricating up so that we're not actually just having friction about those lungs grinding on each other, okay? So those are the lungs, big, and then the pleura around them. And then we've got to figure out how the air got to those lungs, okay? That's kind of like the base. That's the big thing that we think about. But it actually starts all the way up with your nose and oral cavity. And this part up here, that's what we call the upper respiratory tract. These are like the things you can kind of see, right? So your nasal cavity, the back of your throat, the pharynx and larynx, and that goes down into the trachea or the windpipe, right? From the trachea is where we start branching off into the lower respiratory tract. So let me get my little cursor up here. You guys already saw the trachea. Whoops. Let's see if we can get it over here. You already saw the trachea. Oh, maybe not. Right there. Lower respiratory tract where that starts to branch, and that first branching that you see is called the bronchi. We have the right main stem bronchi and the left main stem bronchi, and essentially they just go into each lung, okay? Now, that being said, it gets a little more complex. We can't just have one tube plug into each lung and call it a day. We have to get some smaller branching so that ultimately the gases can actually get into those lungs. We'll talk more about those smaller branches in a second, but for a little intro here, the bronchi branch into bronchioles, and then the bronchioles branch into alveoli, and that's the last terminal structure of the lower respiratory tract. So let's recap here, and then I'm going to ask you a question, so pay attention here. Chance to get your test question right, okay? Upper respiratory tract starts with what you can see up here: nose, throat, trachea. Lower respiratory tract branches from the trachea into two main stem bronchi, right and left. And then the bronchi branch into bronchioles, and finally alveoli. And those are all in the lungs. The alveoli are that kind of like terminal structure in these lungs where gas exchange happen. We're going to talk more about them, but first, pause And I want you guys to put in the comments for me, tell me which parts of the respiratory system below are below the larynx. Think about that anatomy, that chart, that picture we just looked at. Select all the structures that happen below the larynx and tell me in the comments what is correct. Good. All right, LaShawn, really nice. Thank you for putting your answer. Go ahead and pop them in there. I'm not gonna give it away until you tell me what you're thinking. All right, Catherine, Narissa, thank you. Okay, nice job. Jessica's on it. Okay, okay. I like the way you guys are thinking. So think back. We've got that nasal cavity, oral cavity going into the pharynx, larynx, and then everything else is below that. So that includes B, the lungs. That's all the way at the bottom. But also C, the trachea. That goes right below the larynx and branches into the bronchi. The nasal cavity, the pharynx, those are part of the upper respiratory tract. They are above the larynx, okay? All that though, and we really want to get down into the alveoli, that lowest part of the lower respiratory tract, where we go from trachea to bronchi to bronchial down to alveoli. This is the terminal structure where all the goodness is going to actually happen. And they're basically little balloons, okay? At the end of each bronchial, we've got this sac. Why? Why would our body make it like this? Well, it gives us more surface area. There is more room for those gases to passively diffuse. So why do we have a respiratory system? For gas exchange. And the structure of the alveoli, maximizing surface area, allows that gas exchange to happen. Remind me, what are the two gases we're talking about? One, oxygen. We have to get that in. And two, carbon dioxide. We've got to get that out. That's toxic. It's an acid. We don't want it building up. So first we breathe in, we get oxygen into our trachea, down to our lungs, all the way into those alveoli, and then it is going to diffuse passively into the bloodstream. That means it's going to go from an area of high concentration to low concentration. It's a high concentration in that alveoli right there. There's not a lot in the blood. It will passively diffuse into the blood so that we can then carry that oxygen out to the body. At the same time, the blood is bringing back carbon dioxide that we've made as a waste product from all the cells in our body. And we've got an awful lot of carbon dioxide in our blood, not a lot in our alveoli. So that allows for passive diffusion of carbon dioxide out of the bloodstream into those alveoli so you can exhale that carbon dioxide. Oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. That's why we have a respiratory system, and this is how it happens. Okay? So check in with me here. Let me know if this is making sense. The exchange of oxygen for carbon dioxide in the lungs happens through what process? Simple diffusion, osmosis, facilitated diffusion, or active transport. This is a common one on the TEAS. I see this a lot. So if you're studying for the TEAS, make sure you know this. Tell me in the comments, what does the exchange of oxygen for carbon dioxide in the lungs happen through? Okay. Okay, there we go. We got a couple answers. I'm seeing a mix. Some D, some A, some C. Give you guys 10 more seconds or so. All All right. Okay, good mix of answers. I got some C, some A, some D. The answer is A. Simple diffusion. Simple is another word for passive, so that might be part of the confusion here. We'll clarify that terminology. In simple diffusion, we've got high concentration over here. We've got a low concentration over here. And atoms diffuse from that area of high concentration to low concentration. It's simple because it doesn't require energy. We don't have to do anything. It just diffuses across that capillary membrane. It's passive. It doesn't require energy. Now, these other three things, however, they do. The facilitated diffusion, we're going to have help. We're facilitating, we're using energy. So we're not just going simply down the concentration gradient. If we're actively transporting, we're using energy. We're actively moving something from one area to another. And that's not what happens with those gases across the capillary membrane when we're exchanging gases in the respiratory system. Let's look again at how it goes. It starts with oxygen diffusion. The blood's got a lot of it. It's going to go into those cells. We're going to go from the alveoli where we've inhaled oxygen, and we're going to put it in the blood. And then ultimately that blood has to bring it to the cells, all the while diffusing down that concentration gradient. Opposite with carbon dioxide. The cells built up a lot of it. It's going to diffuse into the blood, and the blood's going to go to those alveoli. So the carbon dioxide can diffuse across the capillary membrane, out the alveoli, and be exhaled. Remember, the whole time we're talking oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. But question for you guys. If I get oxygen in, we go in the alveoli, we diffuse across the capillary membrane, we're in the blood, yada, yada. Does that do me any good to the rest of the cells in my body? How is it going to get to the cells of my liver, my kidney, my brain, my heart? It has to be transported to every cell in the body. Yeah? And that's where our cardiovascular system is going to plug in to the respiratory system through the process of perfusion. So we get ventilation, air's moving in and out. You guys, we already saw that for the respiratory system. We get the oxygenation. That oxygen is going into the bloodstream through passive diffusion. But we have to actually get that oxygen now out to every cell in the body. Perfusion is the act of bringing that oxygen to the tissues, and it does that through the cardiovascular system. Okay, does that make sense, you guys? What do you think so far? Is the respiratory system clicking? You guys kind of know that upper and lower respiratory tract. You've got that basic terminology down. You got the nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea going down into the lower respiratory tract with the bronchi, bronchioles, branching into those alveoli, giving us lots of surface area for passive diffusion so that we can get that gas exchange. Oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. What do we think? Give me a thumbs up if this is clicking. Give me a thumbs down if you're not understanding, or tell me what your questions are. I want to make sure everyone feels good about the structure and function of the respiratory system. Getting a thumbs up. Okay, one thumbs up from Jessica. Thank you. All right, all right. It really, honestly, I like the respiratory system because I think it makes sense, right? I think that it is pretty logical in the way that it's like structured out. The terms aren't too hard. So I'm a thumbs up on respiratory. A couple of really good questions here. So explain perfusion again, and what do the alveoli do? The alveoli are simply here for gas exchange. If you got to remember just one word, alveoli, gas exchange, okay? Oxygen's going to go in. Let's look at this photo where it really breaks down. We're going to breathe it in, and it goes into our alveoli. It's that end structure. When it goes through that whole upper respiratory tract, down the trachea, down the bronchi, sound the bronchiole. It's going to end in this alveoli, this little balloon, and gas diffuses across that alveoli. So when you hear alveoli, you're like, what the heck does an alveoli do? Just think gas exchange, okay? And then what about perfusion? Perfusion is what happens next, okay? We already got that gas into the blood. That oxygen, we breathed it in, it went to the alveoli, it diffused into our blood. Thumbs up. But that doesn't do the cells in my kidney, my liver, my brain any good. Every cell in my body depends on oxygen for survival. And perfusion is what brings that oxygen there. It is what sends that blood out to the tissues. And now we'll really talk about it because that's what the cardiovascular system does. When I asked you, hey, why do we have a respiratory system? It was for gas exchange, getting oxygen in, getting carbon dioxide out. When I ask you, why do we have a cardiovascular system, though, it's for perfusion. We've got the oxygen in, and now we have to get it out to our cells. We have to actually pump it to every part of our body. Okay. So before I go on and I start jabbering about the cardiovascular system, I do want to make sure you guys know where to go to get these notes and see these videos because I've already seen some comments and questions. We do not record and send these out. We don't send the notes to you on these just little freebies, but you can get them on archerreview.com. So you come over here to nursing and you click on TEAS 7, and then you're going to click buy now and pick the program you want. It's going to default here to SurePass, which is what you need for the notes. SurePass is going to have all your questions, all your videos, all your notes, and live lectures. So we're sure you're going to pass. It's got everything that you need, right? Once you get it, it'll look like this in your Archer student dashboard where you've got the QBank, you got the videos, and you got the webinars, okay? But I just want you to know where the video and the notes are in case you need to see this again. So on-demand videos is where that is. You come down to science, anatomy and physiology. Here's respiratory. Here's the whole video on respiratory. You can click play. You can listen to just one part. And then you can click on this little paper clip. Y'all see that? That green paper clip? That is going to take you to the notes right here. Everybody. Welcome to another. Pause this. Okay. That's where you get the notes. That's where you're going to see everything we did. Okay. Thumbs up. You guys got that? Because I know it moves quick and you know, you need to be able to find this to refer back to later. Can you please repeat the beginning? Yes. You come over to archerreview.com. You click on nursing TEAS 7, and I'll actually just send you guys out the link for that. So you guys can just go and click that link. It's in our bio too. It's pretty simple, just archerreview.com. And let's see here. And to everyone. Once you've come up to this page and you go ahead and click buy now, SurePass is what you are going to get. You can choose how long you want it. A lot of people just study for 30 days. You might want it a little bit longer, totally up to you. But then when you go into your app, your archerreview.com, you sign in once you've purchased SurePass, you'll go over to the TEAS, the on-demand videos, and boom, there you go. You got the video and you got the notes right there at that green paperclip. And does this include past videos? Absolutely. This includes a video on every objective for the TEAS. So if we go all the way up to the top here, it's over 100 hours of videos. You've got English, you've got standard English conventions, you've got math, measurements and data. You've got all the things, okay? So if you need help with everything, if you need help with just one thing, it is all there, okay? If you already have the subscription, same way. Just go ahead and go into your dashboard, on-demand videos, and click on that paper clip so you'll get the notes. You'll get to see the recording for, you know, anything you want. You obviously have live webinars here too, so you can join everything live that's coming up. if you want. I kind of like the live, we get to chat, you get to ask me questions. So you'll be able to find all of that there as well. Thumbs up. I love it. I'm seeing thumbs up all around. I don't think there's any more questions. Boop, boop, boop. Yes, that means we're good. We're good to get back into the cardiovascular system, which, lucky for me, is my very favorite system to talk about. It is essential to literally every other thing you're ever going to learn about in anatomy. So if you learn about one thing, it's got to be this. So to recap, all right, let's make sure our terminology is straight. Let's put our thinking caps on, get this done. We already talked respiratory. That's the ventilation and the oxygenation. We moved air in and out. We got oxygen into the bloodstream. And now we're talking about how to perfuse, how to get it out to every cell in the body. That requires two things. We have to have a pump and we have to have plumbing, all right? We have to pump that oxygen, which is in our blood, and have a vessel to carry it through to get to every cell of the body. So you guys know the heart's our pump. The heart's going to contract, squeeze, and send blood forward. That blood is traveling inside of blood vessels. And we've got three types of those. First, it goes through an artery. Arteries are attached from the heart and they carry that good oxygenated blood away from the heart. They then get to the capillary, like that alveoli, where a gas exchange happens. The oxygen goes in and the carbon dioxide goes out. Now we've got to bring that carbon dioxide back because we got to get rid of that. Yeah? The blood vessels that carry the blood back towards the heart are your veins. So arteries, A for away. We go away from the heart, carrying our oxygenated blood to the cells. We have gas exchange in those capillaries. And then we carry the deoxygenated blood back to the heart in our veins. Okay, so identify for me what organs are part of the cardiovascular system. Okay, basic knowledge level question. Tell me, I think you guys are all going to get this one right. What organs part of the cardiovascular system? Select all that apply. Okay. Nice job, Catherine. Narissa, awesome. I see some of you over there on Instagram. I love that. Ashley over there joining on Facebook. Reedy on YouTube. Courtney, amazing. Okay, you guys, this is a little bit of a tricky question. At first, you probably saw it and you were like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. This is ridiculous. But then you were like, blood, is that an organ? Lungs? Like, we talked about lungs. What do they have to do with this? The correct two answers are A and C, the heart and the vessels, what we just talked about. The heart pumps the blood through the vessels. This question asked about the organ that is part of the cardiovascular system, and blood not applicable there. Lungs, they have a component, but they are part of the respiratory system, and that's why the correct answers are A and C. So remember, heart pumps the blood, and it goes through those vessels. We talked about the vessel types, so now it's time to really get into the heart. Y'all thought you got off easy. You're like, yeah, the heart, we know it. It's a pump. But the heart is kind of complicated. It's got 4 chambers, 4 valves, all sorts of vessels, very complicated stuff going on. Let's start with the chambers. They come into 2 flavors. Up top, you got your atria. Down below, you've got your ventricles. The atria are what receive blood, okay? So they fill up with blood that's coming on back to the heart. Then they go down into the ventricles, and the ventricles send the blood out. Now, where are they sending the blood out to? Depends on the side of the heart. We've also got two flavors for that. We got right side and we got left side. The right side is what we consider the pulmonary circuit because it's receiving deoxygenated blood from the body and sending it out to the lungs so that what can happen? Gas exchange. We need to send that blood to the lungs so it goes in the alveoli and we drop off our carbon dioxide and pick up our oxygen. So that's what the right side of the heart is doing, blood to the lungs. The left side, on the other hand, is what we call our systemic circuit because it sends blood to our whole system, out to the whole body. Blood comes back from the lungs to the left atria. Remember, the atria receive that blood, and then it goes forward to the ventricle, and the left ventricle sends it out the aorta to the entire body. That aorta is an artery sending that oxygenated blood away from the heart. Okay, so that's a lot of mumbo jumbo, but one thing I want you guys to know for sure is that blood has got to go in this direction. It has got to keep moving forward. On the right side, that means from the right atria to the right ventricle out to the lungs. On the left side, that means from the left atria to the left ventricle, out the aorta to the body. We cannot go backwards or we're going to have some big time problems. And that is what the valves of the heart do for us. Again, we've got 4 valves and they go in 2 little buckets, 2 little camps here. The first type are the AV valves, the atrioventricular valves. And they do exactly what it sounds like. They sit between the atria and the ventricle and make sure that no blood flows backwards. It always goes atria to ventricle, forward, forward, okay? Now, it would be great if these were just called AV valves, but they have different names, and you have to know the names. I'm so sorry, I didn't come up with them. The right AV valve, that is called the tricuspid valve. That's right over here. And then the left AV valve, that is called the mitral valve, and that is right there. Tricuspid, mitral, and the mitral, that gets even trickier because it's got a second name. It is sometimes called bicuspid. Bicuspid for 2 flaps, tricuspid over here for 3 flaps, okay? But at the end of the day, they're AV valves. They sit between the A and the V, the atria and the ventricle. Keep blood moving forward. Thumbs up. Does that make sense? Have I lost you? Can get real confusing, can't it? It's a lot of words, it's a lot of terminology. You guys understand the AV valves, blood moving forward. Hopefully, speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, well, I'm going to keep talking to you. The next type of valve is called a semilunar valve. And they are what is going to make sure blood flows from the ventricles out the arteries instead of making its way backward up to the atria. So first one we've got right here, pulmonary valve. It's just going to be named for the artery it sits on. It's on the pulmonary artery. It's the pulmonary valve. It makes sure that blood flows from this right ventricle out the pulmonary artery instead of going backwards. So I'm sure you understand now the other valve, it's the aortic valve. It's on the aorta. It's the aortic valve. It makes sure blood moves forward from the left ventricle out the aorta. So those are your 2 buckets. AV valves between the A and the V. Semilunar valves, they're on the arteries. They're named for the artery they're on. And the job of those valves, make sure the blood moves forward. If we really just go look at the heart and trace the whole path of blood through the heart, you'll see if we didn't have these valves, we would have a big problem. We need deoxygenated blood to come into our right atria, go forward through that tricuspid valve into the right ventricle, go forward through that pulmonary valve out to the lungs, right side pulmonary circuit. Then gas exchange is going to happen. We're going to drop off our CO2, get our oxygen, and come on back nice and oxygenated to the left atria. We're going to go through that mitral or bicuspid valve to the left ventricle, through that aortic valve out the aorta, and send that oxygenated blood out to our whole body. Got to move forward. That's what we have our valves for. Okay, so tell me here, this is an example of what you might see on your exam. The aortic semilunar valve, where does it prevent backflow of blood into? Into the right atria, right ventricle, left atria, left ventricle. You know, valves stop the backflow of blood. Where does the aortic semilunar valve prevent the backflow of blood into? What do we think? Good job. Okay. LaShawn, nice work. Okay, give you guys about 10 more seconds. Got some B, some A, some C. All right. D. Okay. The correct answer here. Nice job, guys. Lorenz, Manel, Lewis, you got it. It is the left ventricle. So I want to look at this diagram because if we talk about it without looking at it, it's really, really hard. The aortic semilunar valve. So it's the aortic valve. It's on the aorta. Its job, make sure blood doesn't flow backwards. The left ventricle is supposed to contract or squeeze and send blood forward out of the aorta. It's supposed to go this direction. It doesn't want blood going backwards into this left ventricle. The aortic valve, did you say that the aortic valve is blood from ventricle to aorta? That is right, Catherine. For this left side, our systemic side of the heart, we're going to contract and send blood from the left ventricle through the aortic valve into the aorta. That aortic valve is called the aorta because it sits right on the aorta. That's where it's named for. And it wants blood moving forward out the aorta. It prevents backflow into the left ventricle. Because if the heart squeezed and that blood went out and then it leaked back into the left ventricle, we would have big problems. So aortic valve prevents backflow into the left ventricle. What about the pulmonic valve? Everybody type in the comments. Where does the pulmonic valve prevent backflow into? Pulmonic valves right here. So look at it. Blood's got to go forward, out of the right ventricle through the pulmonary artery. Pulmonic valve prevents backflow into the right ventricle. Right ventricle. Nice job, LaShawn, Catherine. Good job. Good job. Reedy asks, what are the semilunar valves? Which ones are they? They're the ones that are on the arteries. So the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve, those are your semilunar valves. They prevent the backflow into the ventricles. All right. Does that make sense, you guys? What do we think? A little bit more clear because I know that's an awful lot. Those are hard questions, but you guys are on it. You guys are on to something. So let's kind of put the pieces together here. Let's kind of talk about how the pulmonary and the systemic system work together. Because we know we're just trying to bring oxygen to our cells. That's the job of the cardiovascular system. So we've got this body here, our venous system, full of deoxygenated blood. This blood has no more oxygen left. It's got a ton of carbon dioxide. It's sad and blue. It has got to get some oxygen. So it's going to go back to the heart and fill up the right side of the heart. Blue deoxygenated blood will go into the right atria, through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle, and then through the pulmonic valve out the pulmonary artery and to the lungs. Right side of the heart sends blood to the lungs. That's why we call it the pulmonary circuit. Now, what's going to happen in the lungs? That's our gas exchange. That's everything we talked about in the respiratory system. That blue deoxygenated blood, it's going to drop all its carbon dioxide off so we can get rid of it. And that oxygen is going to diffuse out the alveoli and into the blood. Now we've got oxygenated blood, right? So all of that gas exchange, it happened in the lungs. We got to send oxygenated blood back out to the body. So it will return to the left side of the heart. The lungs, they send that oxygenated blood back to the left atria through the mitral or tricuspid valve or bicuspid valve, pardon me, into the left ventricle, out the aortic valve, through the aorta, and out to the whole body. That left side of the heart is the systemic circuit, pushing that oxygenated blood into the arteries away from the heart and delivering oxygen everywhere, every cell in the body. So that's that arterial system. It brings it to the cells, and then the cells, what do? They use that oxygen, and then they produce carbon dioxide until that blood turns blue, and it's got to go back to the heart, to the right side, to the lungs, get oxygen, back to the left side of the heart, and out to the body. Around and around in a circle constantly, this is happening in your body. So those are your systems, pulmonary and systemic. And tell me, which one, the blood flow rich in oxygen from the lungs to the heart, which type of circulation is that? Nice, nice. Tell me in the comments here, okay? Lewis, Catherine, okay, okay. Nice. All right, a little bit of mix. I was seeing a lot of A. I've got like B or C. C, something we didn't talk about yet, okay? We can kind of circle back to that in a second. I'm seeing some B, okay. Okay, let's go back to this picture so we can talk about all these different answer choices. Here, the correct answer was going to be A, that rich in oxygen from lungs to the heart. So it's rich in oxygen over here going out to the body, okay? Now, let's compare pulmonary and systemic. Pulmonary, blue blood going to the lungs. So I think of the right side of the heart as the pulmonary circuit. It's poor in oxygen and it goes to the lungs. Okay, so it's like this section of our pathway here. Got blue blood, right side of the heart, goes to the lungs. That's our pulmonary circuit. Then over here is our systemic, where we're red, rich in oxygen. We got the left side sending that rich oxygenated blood. That is your body's systemic circuit. Now, some of you said C over here, coronary circulation. Does anyone know what that is? It's not something we talked about yet. It's like a little bit advanced, kind of fancy. Coronary circulation, let's see, it's not really in that photo. Let me go back to this photo to try to explain. Is circulation that goes to the coronary vessels. And the coronaries are the vessels that are actually on the heart. They're actually delivering that oxygenated blood to the muscle of the heart itself. Because the heart's a muscle, it's got tissues and cells just like everything else. So it's got to get blood that has oxygen in it. The blood that leaves the heart and goes to the vessels on that heart, that is your coronary circulation. Are those on the outside of the heart? Yes, Brianna. The coronary vessels sit on top of the myocardium, which is that thick muscle of the heart that really needs that oxygen. So you don't see it in this picture. They're not inside these ventricles. We don't have it here. They're like over here on that outside over the myocardium. And Catherine says, go ahead and explain that pulmonary circuit. Let's go back to this picture again. Right over here, I'm going to think pulmonary, deoxygenated, blue blood. And it's going from that right side to the lungs. Right side, deoxygenated to the lungs. That is my pulmonary circuit. When it comes to the systemic circuit, think of your whole body as the system. This is my system. So my systemic circuit is sending that blood out to the body. So that's what the left side of the heart does. Pulmonary was over here. Systemic is over here. Oxygenated blood out to my whole body. Okay. That is the pulmonary, systemic, and then we even touched on coronary. You guys got like some really advanced stuff in there with that coronary circulation. So hopefully that helped break it down a little bit, give you a nice recap of the structure and function of the respiratory and cardiovascular system. Remember, respiratory, we breathe our oxygen in and have gas exchange happen in those alveoli. So we get oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. Then we actually have to do something with that oxygen. We have to get it to every cell in the body, and our cardiovascular system does that with perfusion. The heart pumps and it sends that oxygen through the pipes, our blood vessels, to deliver oxygen to every cell in the body. Okay? So we went through a lot of terms. There's a lot of words out there with anatomy and physiology. I don't expect you guys to be an expert. I don't expect you to walk away and just be like, oh my gosh, I'm good to go. That is why I want you to go get that SurePass program. Okay, you can scan that QR code. You can, we put the link in the chat a little bit earlier. It's in our bio as well. Choose however long you need it, but get those videos, get these notes so that you can rewatch not just this lecture, but any other lecture out there. It's over 100 hours because it's not just got science, right? It's got math, English, reading. We also put out a ton of free content on our socials at Archer Teas, at Archer Teas Prep on TikTok. So join us over there for fun videos and freebies and let us know how we can help you. Archer Review is really dedicated to your entire nursing journey. We have programs to help you once you're in nursing school, once you're studying for your NCLEX, even if you go back to grad school one day. We want to be your go-to. So always feel free to reach out and tell us what you need. I'm going to put our email here. You should see it on the slide, but we've got pre-nursing at archerreview.com. So in case I end this and, you're like, what? I needed this, I needed that, you guys can always email it. Can you get the notes before you start the live webinar? If you have SurePass, you can absolutely download the notes before the webinar anytime. So when you come over to T7 and you get that SurePass, it will be right here in those on-demand videos. So like, what's the next webinar I am doing? Let's look here and see when I'm back with you guys. I want to say it is Wednesday the 19th. We are doing the digestive and nervous system. So I could come over here, click on science, anatomy, and let's scroll down. Here is digestive. So I could click on this paper clip and go ahead and get the notes for that webinar before it starts. You've got to have the SurePass to be able to rewatch the recordings, to get those notes. So make sure you go ahead and do that. If you've got any questions or problems with it, of course, just shoot us an email over at that pre-nursing at archerreview.com. Okay. Well, that is what I have got for you guys today. Thank you so much for going through the respiratory and cardiac with me. I'll stay on a little bit if anyone has any other questions. I'll chat you back. But otherwise, I hope to see you next Wednesday for digestive and nervous system. Bring your friends. Go ahead and get the SurePass so you have the notes, and I will see you guys there. Bye, everyone.